Imagine a world without hospitals, without doctors, without medicine. A world where a simple infection could be a death sentence. How did our ancestors survive diseases, injuries, and infections? The answer lies in practices that shaped modern medicine as we know it today. Thousands of years ago, the first human societies faced challenges that seem unimaginable to us now. Injuries, diseases, and even childbirth were matters of life and death. A broken bone could mean never walking again. A fever could wipe out entire families, yet somehow humanity survived and thrived. Through careful observation of nature and countless generations of experimentation, they developed the first healing techniques. They discovered plants that could ease pain, methods to set broken bones, and even primitive surgical procedures that saved lives. This wasn't just survival. This was the birth of medicine. They didn't have laboratories or microscopes. They didn't have textbooks or medical schools. What they had was something perhaps more powerful, an intimate connection with their environment and an extraordinary ability to learn from both success and failure. Every remedy discovered was hard-won knowledge, often paid for in suffering and lives lost. From the shamans of prehistoric tribes to the first herbalists gathering healing plants in ancient forests, these early healers laid the foundation for every medical breakthrough that followed. Their story isn't just about medicine, it's about human ingenuity and our relentless drive to overcome even the most daunting challenges. If you love history and want to uncover the mysteries of the great civilizations that shaped our world, like this video, subscribe to the Dawn of Humankind channel and don't miss a single episode. Join us as we journey back to where it all began, the dawn of human healing. How did our ancestors discover which plants could heal and which could harm? The answer might surprise you. The first humans were keen observers of the natural world around them, including the behaviors of animals. Imagine an early human watching an injured wolf chewing on certain leaves after being wounded, only to see that wolf recovered days later. Or perhaps noticing how sick animals would seek out specific plants that they normally wouldn't eat. These observations weren't coincidental. They were the beginning of pharmacology. Through this careful observation of animal behavior and countless trials of their own, our ancestors began to build a remarkable pharmacy from nature itself. Chamomile flowers were discovered to calm inflammations and aid sleep. Aloe vera's cooling gel provided relief for burns and skin irritations. Willow bark, which contains what we now know as salicylic acid, the active ingredient in aspirin, was chewed to reduce fever and pain. This wasn't simply random guesswork. Each discovery represented generations of careful observation, trial and error, and lessons often learned the hard way. A wrong plant could mean death. A right one could mean salvation. This precious knowledge wasn't written down in books or stored in databases. Instead, it was carefully passed down through generations through storytelling, apprenticeships, and rituals. Mothers taught daughters which herbs could ease childbirth pains. Fathers showed sons which tree barks could stop bleeding. Tribal healers took apprentices who would memorize hundreds of plants and their specific uses. Here's something truly fascinating. Many of these prehistoric remedies have been scientifically validated by modern medicine. The foxglove plant, used by ancient healers for heart conditions, eventually gave us digoxin, a medication still used today for heart failure. The bark of the cinchona tree, long used to treat fevers, provided us with quinine for malaria treatment. And speaking of ancient medical practices, did you know that trepanation, one of the earliest known surgical procedures where a hole was drilled into the skull, had an astonishing survival rate? Modern studies of prehistoric skulls show that up to 80% of patients survived this procedure, evident from the healing marks around the surgical sites. Even more remarkable, many patients underwent the procedure multiple times during their lives and survived to tell the tale. This knowledge didn't emerge overnight. It represents thousands of years of human experience, tragedy and triumph, each remedy potentially discovered through suffering, but preserved through the hope of healing future generations. This was the true beginning of what we now call natural medicine, and its legacy continues in both traditional healing practices and modern pharmacology. Plants weren't the only tools in our ancestors' medical arsenal. In fact, some of the most astonishing evidence of prehistoric medicine comes not from herb gardens, but from stone tools and, perhaps most remarkably, from the healed bones of our ancient relatives. Imagine this scene from 20,000 years ago. A young hunter has returned to camp with a deep wound. The tribal healer reaches not for herbs, but for carefully crafted stone implements. These weren't just rocks. They were precision instruments, meticulously shaped for specific medical purposes. Razor-sharp flint blades could cut with surgical precision. Bone needles, threaded with animal sinew, could close wounds with stitches. Specialized stone tools could extract thorns, drain infected wounds, and even scrape away diseased tissue. One of the most incredible discoveries from ancient skeletal remains shows that our ancestors knew how to set broken bones. They fashioned splints from wood and plant fibers, immobilizing fractures and allowing them to heal properly. Archaeological evidence shows fractures that healed so well you might never know the bone had been broken if you didn't look closely with modern technology. But the most stunning evidence of prehistoric surgical skill comes from a procedure so bold it seems almost unbelievable: trepanation. Yes, our ancestors were performing brain surgery thousands of years before modern hospitals. This technique involved deliberately cutting or drilling a hole into the living human skull. The earliest evidence dates back more than 7,000 years before Christ. Why would they do something so dangerous? Many believe it was to relieve pressure from head injuries, treat seizures, or alleviate severe headaches. Others suggest it might have had spiritual purposes, perhaps to release evil spirits thought to cause illness. The truly mind-boggling part is that they did this without anesthesia, without sterilization, without antibiotics, using only stone tools, and many patients survived. We know this because archaeological evidence shows healed bone growth around the surgical sites. The edges of these ancient openings often show signs of healing, meaning the individual lived for months or even years after the procedure. In ancient Peru, some skulls show evidence of multiple trepanations on the same person, with healing between operations. Imagine undergoing such a procedure not just once, but several times, and surviving each time. This speaks volumes not only about human resilience, but also about the skill of these ancient surgeons. These weren't random acts of desperation. The consistent patterns and techniques found across different continents suggest systematic knowledge that was refined over generations. From the mountains of Peru to the plains of Europe, similar trepanation methods developed independently, showing how universal the human drive toward healing truly is. The legacy of these primitive surgical techniques lives on. Modern neurosurgeons still perform craniotomies, the contemporary version of trepanation, for many of the same reasons our ancestors might have, such as relieving pressure on the brain. The tools have changed dramatically, but the fundamental understanding that sometimes healing requires intervention remains the same. Our ancestors weren't just surviving. They were pioneering medical procedures that would form the foundation of surgical practice for millennia to come. For our prehistoric ancestors, the line between the physical and spiritual worlds wasn't just blurry. It often didn't exist at all. Prehistoric medicine wasn't just about plants and surgical tools. It was equally about connecting with the unseen forces that governed their world. Imagine you're in a prehistoric settlement as night falls. A member of your tribe has fallen ill with a mysterious fever. The community gathers around a fire as the shaman arrives, adorned in animal hides and elaborate headdresses designed to channel spiritual powers. This wasn't mere theatrical performance, it was medicine in its most holistic form. These shamans and healers were the original medical practitioners, but their approach was far more comprehensive than simply treating physical symptoms. They understood illness as a disruption in the natural order, often caused by malevolent spirits, broken taboos, or cosmic imbalances. Their treatments addressed not just the body, but the soul and the community as a whole. The healing rituals could be elaborate and multisensory experiences. Rhythmic drumming would alter consciousness, both for the healer and the patient. Sacred chants passed down through generations created sound vibrations believed to realign the body's energies. Medicinal smoke from burning specific herbs would purify the air and drive away sickness-causing spirits. Archaeological evidence from cave paintings and burial sites suggests these spiritual healing practices date back at least 40,000 years. In the Trois Frères cave in France, images show what appears to be a dancing shaman wearing animal skins, possibly depicting a healing ritual from 17,000 years ago. These weren't just superstitious practices divorced from practical medicine. The shaman's toolkit included very real medicinal herbs, often prepared with precise knowledge of their properties. The ritual context in which these herbs were administered, with ceremony, community support, and the healer's undivided attention, likely enhanced their effectiveness through what we now recognize as powerful psychological components of healing. Many traditional cultures still preserve elements of this ancient approach. The medicine men and women of indigenous tribes across the Americas, Australia, and Africa continue practices remarkably similar to those of our distant ancestors. In some cases, modern science has validated their methods. For example, the trance states induced through rhythmic drumming have been shown to alter brainwave patterns in ways that can reduce pain perception and boost immune function. Perhaps most fascinating is how these ancient practitioners recognized connections modern medicine is only now rediscovering. That healing happens best in community, that the mind influences the body, and that treating the whole person often works better than addressing isolated symptoms. This integration of the magical and medical wasn't a primitive misunderstanding, it was an intuitive recognition that human healing is complex and multidimensional. Our ancestors may have explained illness through spirits and magic, but their holistic approach to treatment, addressing mind, body, community, and spirit, contains wisdom that modern medicine is increasingly appreciating. So did you know that our ancestors were performing complex surgeries thousands of years ago? If you're enjoying this journey through prehistoric medicine, please like this video, share it with friends who love history, and subscribe to the Dawn of Humankind channel for more incredible stories about our shared human past. And let me know in the comments, would you try a prehistoric healing technique if modern medicine couldn't help you? As nomadic hunter-gatherers settled into permanent communities and the first great civilizations began to rise, something remarkable happened to medicine. The isolated knowledge of tribal healers began to converge, be recorded, and systematically expanded upon. This wasn't just an evolution, it was a revolution in human healing. Around 5,000 years before Christ, as magnificent cities arose along the fertile banks of the Nile, Tigris, Euphrates, Indus, and Yellow rivers, medicine transformed from an oral tradition into something we might recognize as an early medical science. In ancient Egypt, medicine became a sophisticated profession. The Egyptians were pioneers in specialization. They had physicians dedicated solely to diseases of the eyes, others for the stomach, and still others for invisible ailments we might now call internal medicine. The Edwin Smith Papyrus, dating back to around 1600 years before Christ, contains detailed surgical techniques that would be recognizable to modern doctors. It describes 48 cases of injuries, fractures, wounds, and even brain injuries with remarkable clinical precision. Perhaps most impressive was their practical pharmacy. Egyptian physicians used honey to treat wounds, a practice now validated by modern science, as honey contains natural antibacterial properties and creates an environment hostile to bacteria. They crafted poultices of moldy bread for infections, unknowingly harnessing the power of what we now know as penicillin, thousands of years before its official discovery. Meanwhile, across the desert in Mesopotamia, the Babylonians were developing their own sophisticated medical systems. The Code of Hammurabi, one of the oldest legal codes in existence from around 1700 years before Christ, includes regulations for medical practice, including fees for successful surgeries and penalties for failures. These weren't just legal matters, but reflect a society where medicine had become a formalized profession with standards and expectations. Far to the east, in the fertile valleys of India, the Ayurvedic medical tradition was taking shape. Beginning around 3,000 years before Christ, Ayurveda approached health as a balance between body, mind, and spirit. A holistic vision that integrated diet, herbal remedies, surgical techniques, and lifestyle practices. The ancient text, Charaka Samhita, described hundreds of medicinal substances and surgical procedures that formed the foundation of Indian medicine for millennia. In ancient China, the legendary Yellow Emperor's inner canon, compiled around 2,000 years before Christ, laid out theories of complementary forces like yin and yang that needed to be balanced for health. The Chinese developed acupuncture, mapping out elaborate pathways of energy through the body and discovering how stimulating specific points could alleviate pain and treat disease. What makes these civilizations' achievements truly remarkable is how they began systematically documenting their medical knowledge. No longer relying solely on memory and oral tradition, they created the world's first medical textbooks, written on papyrus, clay tablets, palm leaves, and bamboo. This transition from memory to written record meant knowledge could accumulate more rapidly, be transferred more accurately, and spread more widely than ever before. These early medical systems weren't isolated developments. Trade routes connecting these great civilizations allowed medical knowledge to flow between them. Herbs from India made their way to Egypt. Surgical techniques from Mesopotamia influenced Greek physicians. Medicine became one of humanity's first truly international collaborative sciences. The foundation for all these remarkable achievements wasn't built from nothing. Each civilization built upon the thousands of years of practical knowledge accumulated by our prehistoric ancestors, the shamans, healers, and medicine women who had carefully observed, experimented, and preserved their discoveries through generations of oral tradition. The first civilizations didn't invent medicine. They systematized, expanded, and recorded the wisdom of our prehistoric forebears. The next time you reach for an aspirin, sip chamomile tea for sleep, or apply aloe vera to a sunburn, you're connecting with a tradition that stretches back to the dawn of humanity. The legacy of prehistoric medicine isn't just preserved in museums and textbooks. It lives on in practices we still rely on today. Modern medicine, with all its technological marvels and scientific understanding, stands on a foundation built by our prehistoric ancestors. Their contributions weren't primitive missteps on the path to real medicine. They were the essential first chapters in humanity's ongoing quest for healing. Consider herbal medicine, now often called phytotherapy. Today, scientists in pharmaceutical laboratories isolate active compounds from plants, study their molecular structures, and synthesize medications. But this approach began with prehistoric healers who discovered through careful observation and generational knowledge that willow bark could reduce fever, the same plant that would eventually give us aspirin. The World Health Organization estimates that even today, around 80% of the world's population relies primarily on traditional plant-based medicines. In many regions, these healing traditions have unbroken lineages stretching back thousands of years. When a traditional healer in the Amazon rainforest prescribes a plant remedy that modern science later validates, We're witnessing the enduring power of prehistoric medical wisdom. Perhaps most surprisingly, even prehistoric surgical techniques have their modern counterparts. Craniotomy, the modern version of trepanation, remains a vital neurosurgical procedure for relieving pressure on the brain, removing tumors, and treating traumatic injuries. The tools and understanding have dramatically evolved, but the core principle remains the same. Sometimes healing requires direct intervention. Archaeological evidence suggests our ancestors even pioneered concepts like rehabilitation. Skeletons have been found showing serious injuries that had healed, individuals who would have required extensive care and support from their communities to survive. This demonstrates not just medical knowledge, but compassionate caregiving, the foundation of nursing that remains essential to healthcare today. The prehistoric understanding that certain substances could alter consciousness for healing purposes lives on in modern anesthesiology. While our ancestors might have used plants like mandrake or opium in ritualistic contexts, their discovery that pain could be managed and consciousness temporarily altered was revolutionary, a concept fundamental to modern surgical practice. Even the holistic approach of prehistoric shamans finds echoes in contemporary healthcare. The recognition that healing involves psychological, social, and spiritual dimensions, not just physical intervention, is increasingly embraced by modern medicine. Studies consistently show that patients' beliefs, community support, and mental outlook significantly impact healing outcomes, something prehistoric healers intuitively understood. Perhaps most profoundly, prehistoric medicine established the core values that still define healthcare. The drive to ease suffering, the willingness to innovate, the careful observation of outcomes, and the faithful transmission of knowledge to future generations. These values transcend time and technology. The story of prehistoric medicine isn't just about techniques and remedies. It's about human ingenuity and compassion in the face of suffering. It's about communities coming together to care for their vulnerable members. It's about the relentless human drive to understand our bodies and the world around us. The next time you benefit from modern medicine, remember that you're experiencing not just contemporary science, but the culmination of thousands of years of human healing wisdom. Our prehistoric ancestors didn't just survive, they created the foundation for all medical knowledge that followed. Their legacy isn't just in our past, it continues to shape our present and future. The story of prehistoric medicine reveals something profound about our species. The quest for healing isn't just a modern pursuit, it's one of humanity's oldest and most universal characteristics. From the first shaman who discovered a pain-relieving herb to the earliest surgeon who dared to open the skull to relieve suffering, our ancestors were driven by the same impulse that powers modern medicine, the determination to overcome illness and injury. Through careful observation of the natural world, through daring experimentation, and through the faithful transmission of knowledge across generations, our prehistoric ancestors created a foundation upon which all future medicine would build. Their techniques, while rudimentary by today's standards, were revolutionary in their time, and they saved countless lives that would otherwise have been lost. The journey from prehistoric healing to modern medicine isn't a story of superstition giving way to science. Rather, it's a continuous thread of human ingenuity and compassion stretching across time. Each generation stood on the shoulders of those who came before, refining techniques, expanding knowledge, and preserving wisdom. What's perhaps most humbling is the realization that future generations will likely look back at our advanced medical practices with the same mixture of respect and astonishment with which we view trepanation or shamanic healing. The medical interventions we consider cutting-edge today, chemotherapy, organ transplantation, genetic engineering, may seem as crude and rudimentary to our descendants as stone surgical tools seem to us. Will they marvel at how we once treated cancer by poisoning the entire body in hopes of killing the disease? before killing the patient? Will they be amazed that we replaced organs mechanically instead of regenerating them? Will they wonder at our limited understanding of the mind-body connection or the role of the microbiome? Just as we can trace a direct line from prehistoric plant remedies to modern pharmaceuticals, from trepanation to neurosurgery, future historians will trace the lineage. From our medical practices to whatever remarkable healing technologies emerge in the centuries to come. What remains constant across this vast expanse of time is the fundamentally human drive to heal, to care for the sick and injured, and to pass on knowledge that might save lives in the future. This is perhaps the most enduring legacy of prehistoric medicine, not just specific techniques or remedies, but the establishment of healing as a core human value. As we close this journey through the origins of medicine, I invite you to look at modern healthcare with fresh eyes, to see not just today's science, but the echoes of ancient wisdom that still influence our approach to healing and the human body. If you enjoyed this exploration of prehistoric medicine, please hit the like button and share this video with friends who appreciate the wonders of human history. Subscribe to the Dawn of Humankind channel to join us on more journeys through ancient times, as we uncover the origins of civilization and the remarkable achievements of our ancestors. Until next time, stay curious about our shared human past.